Okay, so let's get into this. We're doing a deep dive today that tackles a really provocative claim.
A huge one.
The idea that capitalism, as we've known it, is dead. And not just, failing or struggling, but structurally gone.
It's a staggering claim to make, especially coming from an economist like Yanis Varoufakis. We're really digging into his argument that the whole global system has shifted into something new.
Something he calls technofeudalism.
Exactly.
So our mission for you today is, well, it's pretty simple. We want to give you the shortcut to understanding the key architectural differences between classic capitalism and this new system. Who are the new players? How is wealth being generated now?
And maybe most importantly, what are the, frankly, startling geopolitical implications for global power and, really, for you?
Right. And we should be clear from the start, this isn't another discussion about late-stage capitalism.
No. Varoufakis is very clear on this. He says, if we treat this as just an extension of the old system, we completely miss the point. He claims the two foundational pillars of capitalism, pillars that have been there for centuries.
Have been replaced.
Yeah.
Entirely.
God.
And that's the core of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
This isn't just a disruption, it's a systemic replacement. So let's start with that first pillar he says is crumbled. Traditional markets.
Well, in a classic capitalist system, a market was, at least in theory, an open space. Competition, supply, demand. That's what set prices and outcomes.
Sure. If you sold bad shoes, someone else would come along and sell better ones, cheaper. The consumer had choice, which kept the whole thing competitive.
But the source material draws this incredibly crucial distinction. Varoufakis argues that those open markets have been almost totally superseded by platforms.
And that's where he introduces the term cloud fiefs for giants like Amazon, Google, Alibaba.
And that's where that whole feudal analogy really starts to land. What's so fascinating is that a platform, a cloud fief, isn't a market at all. Not a free one, anyway.
It's a centrally planned space.
Right. It's privately owned, meticulously engineered. The person who owns the platform, the technolord, they set all the rules. They control the infrastructure, and they decide who even gets seen by the customers. They own the digital land.
So the moment a small business decides to sell their products, they aren't entering a competitive market. They're entering a private territory where the Lord dictates everything.
And they have no choice. They have to enter that fief to access the customers.
Right. And that control over access, that brings us right to the second pillar that he says has collapsed, the shift from profits to rents.
This is the economic heart of technofeudalism, and it's a key piece of knowledge you really need to grasp.
So traditional profit was earned. It was generated from, making things?
Pretty much. From productive activity like manufacturing, or through mercantile trade buying low, selling high, wealth was tied in some way to innovation or risk or actual production.
Okay, but in this techno-feudal system, the main way wealth is extracted is through what he calls cloud rents. And I think we need to pause on this for a second, because this is the big difference.
It is the definitive difference. The technolords, the owners of these platforms, they don't necessarily profit from the sale of the item itself.
So what are they doing?
They extract rent just for allowing the transaction to happen on their digital property.
Well, hold on, let me push back on that a little. How is that different from, say, a physical shopping mall? If I open a shop in a mall, I pay rent for the space. Isn't this just a digital version of that?
That's a great question, but there's a huge structural difference. A mall owner provides physical space, security, static services.
Okay.
Cloud rent is different because the platform isn't just providing space, it's providing and constantly optimizing the behavioral data flow. The platform owns the algorithm that knows the customer better than the business owner does.
Ah, so the rent isn't for the digital shelf space.
No, it's rent for the data, for the eyeballs, and for the behavioral guidance that the platform has harvested and owns. That's the real asset.
And the scale of this is what?
Well, the source gives a really shocking example. Up to 40% of what a seller makes on Amazon can go directly to the technolord as rent. For fees, logistics, for visibility, all extracted by the owner of that digital land.
40%. Wow, that just completely redefines the whole value chain. That money is extracted because the technolord controls the infrastructure and the customers, not because they actually made anything.
So the new engine of wealth is extraction through algorithmic ownership. The rent funnels everything upwards.
So if markets and profits are out, and we have cloud fiefs and rents instead, What's the new asset that makes this whole thing run? We had to define cloud capital.
Cloud capital is the new core assets, what's driving this whole shift. And to define it simply, it's the integrated algorithms and digital infrastructure that let tech giants constantly monitor and modify human behavior.
To extract wealth without needing factories.
Exactly. No traditional industrial process needed.
You see, this is where the sheer scale of the shift really hits you. In old-school capitalism, the industrialist owned physical factory capital machines, assembly lines. To get more profit, you had to build more factories.
Right. But cloud capital is entirely algorithmic. It's behavioral. It's constantly harvesting your data for free, learning your habits, and subtly guiding your decisions.
And not just suggesting things.
No, it's preempting and shaping what you're going to buy or click on next. It's capital that works on your mind, not on steel.
That sounds a little sinister.
Yeah.
Give me a concrete example. Is it just a personalized ad, or is it deeper?
It's much deeper. Think about Netflix. They don't just recommend a movie based on your history. They use your viewing data to decide which thumbnail to show you for that movie.
To make me more likely to click.
Precisely. Which scenes to test in trailers, even what kind of content to greenlight in the first place. They are constantly optimizing the environment to maximize your time and attention for their system, which then generates more data and more value for them. That behavioral modification loop is cloud capital at work.
Okay, so with cloud capital defined, that feudal analogy becomes crystal clear. We can now identify the three key players in this new economy.
You can map the hierarchy perfectly. First, you have the owners, the technolords, the platform masters who own the digital cloud, the algorithms.
And then you have the businesses that still actually produce things. The manufacturers, the retailers. Varoufakis calls them the vassal capitalists.
The vassal capitalists are the tenants. They still own traditional capital, factories, inventory, but they're completely dependent on the Lord's platform to reach customers.
They're the ones paying that 40% cloud rent just to survive.
Exactly. They are subservient to the digital infrastructure that holds the customer captive.
And finally, the biggest class, the cloud serfs.
Which is you and me and pretty much everyone using Facebook or Google or TikTok. We are the users.
We're the ones providing the one absolutely essential resource.
Free data. Just like a medieval peasant worked the Lord's land, we provide the data stream, the digital labor that fuels cloud capital. And we do it in exchange for free services. Our clicks, our posts, our searches, that's the raw material.
The genius of the system, and the horror of it, is that we're all participating, often without even thinking about it, as serfs. We provide that free data stream, which ensures the vassal capitalists stay dependent and the technolords just keep accumulating more and more power.
It's a self-perpetuating system built on our own activity.
So we've established that cloud serfs and vassal capitalists are trapped in this system domestically. But that ownership model becomes, well, terrifying when you look at it globally. How does a domestic rent-seeking platform become a tool for geopolitical dominance?
And that's the perfect transition. Because if cloud capital is the new measure of power, Varoufakis argues that the geopolitical tensions we're seeing, especially the US-China conflicts, aren't just a trade war.
Or a clash of ideologies.
No, he calls it a new Cold War that's driven entirely by the race for cloud capital dominance.
That's the key insight. Who owns the cloud? And according to the sources, only 2 countries possess significant dominant cloud capital on a global scale.
The US and China, Silicon Valley versus the massive integrated tech giants of Shenzhen and Beijing.
And this is where the map gets redrawn. Varoufakis basically argues that any nation that didn't develop its own dominant cloud capital is now being sidelined. He says Europe, for example, is finished.
Irrelevant is the word he uses, because they never produced a European Google or a European Amazon with that kind of global scale.
So they're just consumers of foreign cloud capital.
Either American or Chinese. They have no sovereign way to extract cloud rent themselves. They are essentially economic vassals on a continental scale.
But the deepest conflict, according to this analysis, it all centers on the stability of the global economy, which for decades has been anchored by the U.S. dollar.
The dollar as the world's reserve currency, yes.
And its dominance is being directly threatened by how China has so seamlessly integrated its tech platforms with its financial system. The specific mechanism cited is something like WeChat Pay.
Right. WeChat Pay and similar systems allow for enormous rapid transactions that are all contained within the Chinese digital ecosystem.
So when goods are traded or services are paid for, even internationally through these Chinese channels.
That transaction completely bypasses the existing international banking structure, which relies on the US dollar for clearance.
So if billions of dollars of trade can happen completely outside the dollar system, then the U.S. loses its most powerful tool of economic hegemony.
The ability to sanction, to monitor, to control global finance, it's gone. And for Varoufakis, this is the final, ultimate conclusion. This systematic bypassing of the dollar, all made possible by China's massive cloud capital, that is the real reason driving today's geopolitical conflicts.
The economic power shift is the engine, and everything else is just a convenient disguise.
That's the argument.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered the economic model and the geopolitical stakes, but there's one last consequence of living under technofeudalism, and it might be the most insidious one.
The disappearance of the autonomous individual.
What does that mean?
Well, this is the psychological fallout of becoming a cloud serf. Classical capitalism, for all its flaws, it operated on the idea of the autonomous, liberal individual who had free will, made rational choices.
An individual who could, at least in theory, resist manipulation.
Right, but how does technofeudalism dismantle that idea? Because the entire system relies on modifying human behavior to extract data, the platforms are engaged in a kind of constant psychological training.
So the algorithms, like on TikTok or what Alexa suggests,
are constantly monitoring and training our desires. They aren't just reacting to what you liked 5 minutes ago, they are subtly engineering what you will want next, often before you consciously know it yourself.
So we've moved beyond simple persuasion, like an old TV ad, into a state of continuous, preemptive behavioral modification.
Exactly. You search for one thing, and the algorithm floods your entire digital environment with the next logical step in your consumption journey, or your ideological one. It's capital optimized for anticipation.
And this leads to a pretty profound philosophical consequence. The self is replaced by a performance, a persona.
We tailor our posts, our clicks, our consumption, even our emotional reactions to get algorithmic approval, more likes, more views, or just getting the content we want fed to us. We're performing for the machine that owns the cloud.
Sacrificing an authentic inner life for optimized engagement. So the algorithm isn't just selling us shoes. It's defining who we are in the digital space. It's creating a digital self that's perfectly optimized for rent-seeking.
Which is a fundamental attack on the idea of a rational actor. The data you generate isn't just an asset. It's a mirror the Lord uses to train the serf. It connects right back to the beginning. The system is different because it has replaced individual free will, the engine of the market, with managed, optimized behavior. That's the ultimate tool of cloud capital.
So to synthesize all this, the global economy, according to this analysis, has fundamentally shifted. We've gone from a world of competitive markets and earned profits
to a system of centrally controlled cloud fiefs and extracted rents.
And this entire structure is held up by cloud capital, those behavioral algorithms, which funnel all the wealth and power to the technolords.
And in the process, create this dangerous, volatile geopolitical divide between the U.S. and China. It is a profound, and I have to say, a pretty dark diagnosis of where we are.
And it leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to think about this week as you navigate your own cloud fiefs. If our desires are constantly being trained, monitored, and modified by these algorithms, the very infrastructure of our digital lives, what truly remains of the concept of free choice?
And how does acknowledging that training redefine our relationship to the data we produce every single second, effectively for free?
Something to ponder next time Alexa finishes your sentence for you.
Or TikTok shows you exactly what you didn't even know you wanted.
Thank you for providing the absolutely fascinating sources for this deep dive into technofeudalism. We'll catch you next time.